if you're going to have the ideal set of degree, if you ask me, would be Hi, how's it going? Welcome back to the Elite Automation YouTube channel. I'm Malachi, owner, CEO, and engineer of Elite Automation. So today I wanted to talk with you guys about selecting a career path in the industrial automation space and how to select that career path, what is the right career path for you, and kind of overall just get you brainstorming before selecting some type of route, like going to college for mechanical engineering and then getting done with mechanical engineering and then deciding you don't even want to do mechanical engineering, or you don't want to do the day-to-day tasks of a mechanical engineer because maybe on the outside it seemed like something fun to do and an aspect that you'd be really interested in doing, but the reality of the situation is the day-to-day tasks of that job is not something that you truly want to do. So I kind of want to dive in a little bit to like what the different tasks may look like for particular job titles, and overall just go over some different job titles that are available for the industrial automation space. So down in the description below, we'll probably have like a list of different job titles that you could potentially have within this industry. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with a couple very common job titles that I feel like a lot of people go after, and they also are kind of in the same category as far as what your work life is going to look like. A couple of these job titles are going to be your mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and controls engineering. So for these particular types of engineering jobs, you have to think you're going to be sitting at a desk and you're going to be like just programming or doing some mechanical design and manipulation of parts, doing some electrical engineering, stuff like that. And just sitting there in AutoCAD like all day. With those particular job tasks, you're going to be spending a majority of your time inside of a software just manipulating code, manipulating your hardware, whatever it may be. And you're going to have a small amount of interaction with actual real-world devices. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely some exposure to it, especially on the mechanical engineering and controls engineering side of things. I feel like electrical engineering probably has the least. A lot of times electrical engineer designs and maybe they get red line drawings from some guy on the floor, but he never actually goes out on the floor. And same thing with mechanical. It really depends on the company. And that's another kind of topic I want to get into in this video, and I kind of have other videos that pertain to this as well. But your company dynamic is definitely going to play a big role in this. But with mechanical engineering, you may get your prints, somebody starts assembling the product, and then maybe there's some errors in the mechanical drawing. They redline it, they send it back to the mechanical engineer again. So in those instances, if you work at a company like that, like you'll almost never get any floor time at all. Same with controls engineering. You might be the guy up there developing a lot of the code, and then you kind of pass it off to a guy who's on the shop floor, who kind of finalizes the code and kind of does debug and does some more of the finalizing processes. Now, controls engineering, I feel like definitely gets involved and carried throughout more of the process. So a lot of times the guy writing that original piece of code is the guy implementing on the floor, is the guy going out on the installs and doing the commissioning. Now that's kind of what my background is in the controls engineering side of things, programming things from the ground up to doing the commissioning and whatnot. And I'm going to keep diving back into this over and over again. A lot of it's going to matter on the dynamic of the company that you work for. So if you work for a massive company, they're going to segregate these things more for efficiency's sake. It's highly unlikely that you're going to go into a company that's massive that's going to have like a mechanical engineer that follows a project all the way through to the end, or at least like getting involved on the ground level and on the shop floor. Like maybe they go down ever so often, take some measurements of some things and things along those lines. Maybe have a meeting and stuff about like, hey, this is what needs to change, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, you're not going to get highly involved on a day-to-day basis. Maybe a once-a-week basis if you're lucky. Whereas if it's a smaller company, you're going to be getting a lot more exposure to it. You might be the guy mechanically engineering it and assembling it, which are, for some companies, two completely different job titles that never see the light of day to each other. So I kind of want to go ahead and open up a few more options for jobs within the automation industry. Now, given I come more from that background that I was just discussing about, so there's a lot of things that I've been exposed to over years that I have more insight on, whereas like when I start diving into some of these other things, like I have very little experience on, so I can't really talk a lot on them, but I would like to just expose them, and also as being a business owner, I've definitely had the doors open to a whole new world of things in the industry that, like, I was never exposed to. Because at one point in time, I was the guy kept in the basement, and I was just programming, and I was just doing project management and things along those lines. So, like, outside of, like, the shop walls and like, quoting projects and things like that, like, I really had no interaction with the industry per se, which majority of everything goes on the shop floor, most of the important stuff, but there are a lot of things that some of the other companies, especially bigger companies, have that I was not accustomed to until, like, starting my own company. I just mentioned project management. That's going to be a big one. Any type of management in general. So you could be a shop floor manager, you could be a project manager, and a lot of times these particular job titles, you don't even necessarily have to have a ton of experience, because with a bigger company, they're looking at somebody who can utilize like project management softwares and maybe has an engineering degree, so you have a general understanding of what goes on down in a shop floor, and also have an engineering like experience and understanding, but then also have like a management understanding, and especially, like I said, the software, like the timelining and being able to have deadlines and budgets and things along those lines. Like, those are the different aspects they'll be looking for. So there's a lot of these jobs that you could, like, kind of get into on an entry level that, like, say for instance, like, controls engineers may not want anything to do with management. You see a lot of stuff like that. Like, a lot of engineers don't want anything to do with management. So a lot of these companies may have like a project management role open, whether or not you have a ton of experience in that. Then you have like stuff like quoting, which, I encompassed a lot of things in my career of doing a bunch of different things. So I particularly liked working for a smaller company where I was able to do different job tasks and kind of move around throughout the company, especially through different phases of my career, which gave me a ton of different exposures and insights to the grand scheme and the big picture of things, and that's part of what probably drove me to start my own company. And another big thing that I want to mention before I move any further is that pick something and stick with it. Not necessarily pick like electrical engineering or mechanical engineering and stick with it, but like, if you're going to go with industrial automation industry, stick with industrial automation industry. Unless you have some other like side thing that you're doing and you really want that to be your thing. But the only way I would do that is if you already got your degree, you've already kind of went down the path of automation, and then you kind of decide you don't like it, then maybe venture to something else. But like, even if you don't necessarily like it, you can learn to kind of like love something. Like, I always liked automation, but I didn't really love automation until like I had other things going on in my life. Like, I had a fitness YouTube channel and stuff like that, and I did that for a couple years until I killed off all this extra stuff that I was doing. I honestly did not really like love automation, but after that, I started loving it. I started programming after work. I started doing all kinds of extracurricular things that were pertaining to automation, researching different technologies and hardwares and things along those lines. And then one thing I started to notice I'm really good at the things that I'm doing. That basically like fortifies, like, now you feel even better about yourself and the things that you're doing because you're good at the things that you're doing. And we all want to feel good at the things we do. So just like stick with the industry, because even if you do mechanical engineering for 5 years and then switch to electrical engineering, you're going to still have a lot of the fundamentals from one that transition over to the next. Like, even if it's manipulating with AutoCAD, or maybe if it's just understanding how mechanical componentry works. So now that you understand how mechanical componentry works, you understand that, oh, this is going to need a VFD that goes with it. Oh, this is going to need a this that goes with it. Oh, we're going to have this many action items, so that way you're going to need this many inputs or outputs for engineering the control system. Another job title that I find is kind of one of my favorite job titles is automation engineer. And so an automation or application engineer generally does a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis. Like, they're involved with new projects and new technologies and turning this manually operated system into a automated system, and overall just developing the entire project and at least coming up with the concept. Different companies have different job titles associated with this, and sometimes it makes sense just to call the company like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, these are the things I'd like to do. What do you call that job title at your facility? Because automation is new enough that we don't even have a pure structure to every single job title that's in our industry. Like, say for instance, one company, this may be called like a manufacturing improvement engineer, whereas this is an automation engineer. So there's all kinds of different dynamics of that as well. So like, you have these two different job titles which are doing the same thing, and then on the other hand, you have automation engineer at this company and automation engineer at this company doing two completely different things. Maybe automation engineer at this company does the actual application concepting and design and things along those lines and doing a lot of detailed stuff, Whereas maybe this other engineer at this other company, same job title, does more of the ROI analyzation and kind of understanding like, does it even make sense to try to pursue automating this thing? So those are a couple of other job titles. Then you have one of the probably most common job titles you'll see is a process engineer. Those are also one of those things where a process engineer is the whole scheme of things. You could be a process engineer, could technically be doing some programming on a line. Sometimes they're not allowed to touch the line. So these are all things to find out about a particular company and just really find that company that fits you. A small company, and then systems integrators are going to be great for dynamic and flexibility as far as like if you just want to get a taste of everything, perfect way to go, because a lot of these big manufacturing companies, they have such a structure already that they're going to put you in this defined job title of whatever that job title is, and then you're going to be kind of stuck in that defined job title until like you either push to move out and try to apply for another job, or somehow presenting your skill set and work ethic in a way that they just want to move you somewhere else because they see so much value in you. But overall, like really research like what this job title is at a company, or find out what the job titles are, and a lot of times you can do that just by calling. Hey, what are your job titles in relation to industrial automation, where I can, program robots or design the systems on robots, or whatever your question may be, whatever the flavor of type of work is that you want to do. And just keep these things in mind of like, what do you want to do on a daily basis, because a lot of these things are going to change. And like I was saying about the automation engineer, maybe the automation engineer that's calculating ROI is not what you want to do on a daily basis, because a lot of times that's not fun. Like I know some guys in the industry where they literally have to create PowerPoints and do all kinds of stuff that like I'm completely against. Like I hate all that stuff that this person has to do. But they have a very important job, but on the other hand, they have to present it and sell it to their upper management to be able to get approval for the application. And that's something that maybe you don't want to do either, or maybe that's something that you love doing. You love doing spreadsheets and Excel sheets and doing the ROI and math behind all that. And so that could be a perfect job title for you, or job task and job path, career path to go down. So I'm going to go ahead and break down a few more job titles that are within kind of more of the systems integrator side of things, but not necessarily directly related to systems integration. So you have a risk assessor, which essentially is going to analyze how much risk, like what's the likelihood of somebody getting hurt, how hurt are they going to get, things like that. And so like in bigger companies, even bigger integration companies, you're going to have somebody that's all they do is they analyze the risk of a particular application. Some companies will look at the risk that is opposed for a particular application, and they may say we're not even going to touch it because like they just have a different risk tolerance, or they don't want to mess with that particular risk, or maybe they're not used to dealing with that particular risk, and so your job is to analyze that risk and decide whether the company should pursue that particular project or not. In turn, it could be the reason why you do a project is because maybe the operator doing the task is so risky that it just makes sense to automate it, because any day now the operators are gonna cut their hand off, which they probably shouldn't even be doing it manually if that's the case. But there's some operations that are like that, and in those cases, like it makes sense to automate like as soon as possible. You can be a quoter, which I think I mentioned before, where essentially you go in and you quote an application. You can just analyze that. You're gonna basically be analyzing. You can be a quoter to an application, kind of overall, like go in, capture some data, get some pictures, get measurements of things, kind of come up with a rough conceptual idea in your head, and then maybe you bring that back to the office, and then you have a meeting with your team about like what's the best approach to do this. And then after you come up with the best approach, then you can start kind of getting quotes for different items to basically build up your quote and know how much it's going to cost to do this particular application, how much engineering time is going to be in it, how much hard material. Also, like purchase items like robots and PLCs and enclosures, vision systems, things along those lines. You can be an installer of automation equipment. So that's kind of a very low-hanging fruit and pays pretty well. There probably will be quite a bit of a travel involved with that. If you're working for a big enough company who's constantly out installing, you'll be on the road 24/7. I've ran into tons of guys like that in my experience. They make good money. I mean, you can be making like 20 plus an hour all day. Doing those type of jobs, but then again, you're gonna be on the road 24/7, generally bounce from project to project, and there's some people that get accustomed to that life and love that life. For me, I had a flavor of being at the shop quite a bit and then going out and doing an install, being at the shop quite a bit, then going out and doing an install. So I had like a nice mix of it, and there was only really a couple projects where I was on site enough that I just got burnt out on it. So keep that in mind. Like, you don't want to get burnt out on whatever that thing is. You may think that, oh man, I'd love being on the road, but also keep in mind that like it actually is tough being on the road and away from family and friends, and it depends on what kind of life you have on your normal day-to-day life anyway. You know, if you're pretty much a loner, then it really doesn't matter, you know, because you're not really leaving like a lot of friends and stuff like that behind, but you can start getting homesick. And those are all realistic things to keep in mind when accepting a job title like that. Then something that's kind of along those lines would be automation maintenance. So basically maintenance, but we're starting to get into a phase where manufacturing companies are starting to realize that you need higher skilled maintenances. And so now you're getting different levels of maintenance. So one, you can just go in as general maintenance. And a lot of these robotics programs are actually geared and was originally started out because of maintenance programs for manufacturers. So like they were training kids to go into school to do maintenance, but they kind of realized that, hey, like we actually need to step this up a notch because now we're having robots and things along those lines. And now these have turned into more robotics programs and are actually some of the best programs in the market. So I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but if you're going to have the ideal set of degree, if you ask me, would be to get an industrial technology degree or automation or robotics degree, mechatronics degree from like a community college. It doesn't even have to be a community college, but get one of those like associate degrees, applied science degrees, and then just get whatever engineering degree on top of that. So like take those classes and try to take all those classes towards an engineering degree. So like as many of these classes that you can take here that will be applied to an engineering degree, do that. Get this robotics applied science degree, and then take you an engineering degree, then take the following courses to get an engineering degree, so that way you don't have that hurdle of, oh, we can't hire you because you're not an engineer. We can't hire you for this engineering position because you're not an engineer. But on the other hand, what I'm starting to see is that like majority of engineering degrees at this point in time are pretty much garbage when it comes to automation. I kind of hate to say it that engineering is spitting out just like for the most part some like fairly terrible individuals. It's kind of like I actually have a video coming out. Essentially, colleges, especially on the engineering side of things, are producing individuals who are not actually able to do really anything. I'd rather see a kid go through 2 years of AutoCAD class doing mechanical design and doing nothing but that than what some of these other classes are doing. Now, some of these will say, well, oh, these are theory and these are not necessarily applied classes. But the thing about it is you go to college to be applicable. And if you're not applicable when you get out of college, what's the point of college? And business owners are starting to really realize that certain degrees and certain things matter more than others do. And the engineering has kind of, to me, fell behind in that side of things. So you want the engineering thing for those companies who care about you having an engineering degree. And then on the other hand, you're going to gain a lot more experience and a lot more applicable skill sets from like a robotics or mechatronics type of degree. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going through the schooling process. If you're just now getting into school, or if it's early enough in your schooling to make that shift, or vice versa. Maybe you're already going for an engineering type of degree. Maybe you could start taking some of your electives towards some type of robotics program at your school or maybe some other school. Do that research. Like, that was one of the best things that I did whenever I went to college, is I knew that I wasted some period of time in my life, like not going to college. And so what I did was I maximized every class that I could. Every elective I took applied towards another degree. So that way, whenever I got my first degree, I literally only had like 2 more semesters to get a secondary degree. And it was basically just because I mapped out every single class appropriately to work towards the next degree. So just keep that in mind. You can really save yourself a lot of time. You know, you could take with maybe a 5-year program and crunch it down into a 4-year program. So one of the ones that I definitely left out and has like kind of its whole dynamic that's slightly different is sales. So you can be a sales or an account manager where essentially you have a list of leads already and you just got to keep following up with them, see if they want any products, things along those lines. Sales was completely out of any realm of anything that I ever did. My only version of sales was like having an engineering meeting and talking to other engineers about like, you know, how we're going to do this application, and then like with presenting that to them, then they were like, okay, cool, we'll do it. So like, sure, that could be sales in a way, but to me, I don't consider it sales. To me, being sales is like having the ability to close on a product. If a customer is trying to decide whether to go with a particular vendor or product, that you're able to persuade them to utilize whatever your product or your company is. So that's really what I consider sales, and like people who are good at sales, they're able to do those type of things. And there's a whole entire like industry of just sales in itself. So like just sales for the industrial automation industry. So like systems integrators, we work with vendors who sell us our products. We don't generally carry a ton of products for resale, and if we do resell, it's kind of more so of like we're just getting them from our vendor and then shipping them to our customers. And then sometimes we are adding a value of, we'll do some specking of the parts, so we'll figure out the right light curtains to use or laser scanner or vision system, things along those lines. So a lot of times, we'll get involved in helping choose the right product, and then a lot of those other vendors, they have the ability to do the same thing as well. But that's just kind of one value add that we have. And so when it comes to the sales side of things, you could either be selling a product, a service, or like full systems, whether it's like robotic cells or whether it's like a canned like just system that some OEM has already created. There's some systems integrators, which are like OEMs, where they just build the same machine over and over and over again, and it's similar to what we do, but it's different because, like I said, they've built that one thing over and over again, and they're kind of really targeted towards a particular industry, where we are more of a custom robotic shop and do custom applications where we essentially use the same products for every application, but every system and every cell looks different, especially on a layout standpoint. One final thing that you could do is a quality assurance or quality control engineer. I don't really know a ton of what they do, but I know a lot of it has to do with, they're just basically like a lab technician in a sense, where they're testing dimensions of parts and just ensuring that production of whatever's being made is meeting quality specifications. So there's that whole dynamic things. There's a ton of jobs in that. I don't think I would ever want to go in it, but I also don't know enough about it to really speak on it too much. So I think I've been doing enough ranting on for this video. If you have any other questions, put them down in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see any more content from us. We're putting out like 5 videos a week, Monday through Friday. 1 video a day, and they're all going to be related to industrial automation, how to get jobs, how to set up particular hardware, new technologies that are out, applications that we're working on that we are allowed to discuss about, because most things we cannot discuss about, and that's why you don't see a lot from industrial automation. I have a video coming out soon about manufacturers and them needing to allow us to market more, and the things that are proprietary, that are not actually proprietary, we need to be able to utilize those as marketing tools and be able to demonstrate the things that we do. If not, I mean, we essentially either have to have a cool customer, or we have to have a mechanical engineer and other engineers designing stuff all the time that we're not actually utilizing as an application, just so we have marketing content. So yeah, if you are a manufacturer out there, we need to start changing the dynamic of the way we all market. Keep it in mind, everything's changing. It's changing quickly. I think we're all seeing it, and I'll see y'all in the next one.